this is a note that I really wanted to talk about. I thought it was a very interesting perspective. And the headline here, it's an article from Football Scoop. It's an awesome publication. They produce some pretty interesting stuff. Right here, a collective CEO, this is the quote from him. I've told every AD in the country, no more hiring analysts. Fund your NIL instead. And that just poses so many questions for me. Like, that's very interesting. And so when you read more and more about this, right? College football is a big moneymaker. It's the biggest in college athletics, especially when your team performs at a high level. And when you do that, obviously you're got a lot of really talented student athletes there that in turn are probably going to demand more money. Now, money, there's only so much that can go around, and your allocation of those resources as a program becomes a very big factor of your success. So this story is about Jason Belzer, who manages Oklahoma's collective of record, the Crimson and Cream, which is it's a long way of saying he manages the money they pay their players through like NIL and shit like that. But he manages that, but doesn't just manage their collective over there for the Sooners. How about Notre Dame's, Syracuse, dozens of others, all the way down to Robert Morris, and all of them have funny, like, different names. Irish United, Orange United, the Romo, Rise. Like, anyways, he's the CEO of Student Athlete NIL, which in itself markets to athletics departments as the quote here says, the turnkey NIL operation. They do everything from soliciting sponsorships and donations to finding marketing opportunities for athletes and doling out payroll. So actually distributing the money from the actual NIL collective. So this is like where the money actually comes from here. And so that's why I give that kind of background, because his words here and his experience certainly start to make a little bit more sense. And, right here, we get into a piece that is really crazy. Right here, he says that, quote, we had already prepared a report of every single Oklahoma student athlete on the football roster and what their value was going to be in the portal for December and January. That's obviously the open period. You have that like 30-day window when athletes on scholarship can enter their blah, 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 blah. Then he says, we were able to go back to every single player and allow them to know, this is what we believe you're worth. This is what we're going to offer you. And there's not really going to be a whole lot of negotiation, because if you could think you can get a lot more in the portal, have fun. That's what he says. So now, again, this man is not officially connected with the Oklahoma Athletics Department. He manages the NIL collective. He's the third party that kind of oversees this exchange of money. Imagine being a player. You do your exit meeting with your coach, probably your position coach, maybe your coordinator and the head coach, I would assume, at most levels. Is kind of how it usually goes in college football. And then you got one more exit meeting. It's with the man who heads up the NIL fund. And maybe he comes in with a briefcase. Maybe he comes in with a duffel bag. I don't know what he's got. But he says, hey, Kobe, had a pretty good year this year, right? We think you're worth X amount based on our calculations, whatever algorithms, whatever they follow. We think you're worth this. And like he says, there's not really a negotiation, because if I say you're full of shit, I'm worth double, triple that, then their response, it would sound like, is, interesting. Good luck. Let's go see if you are. You know what I mean? And go ahead and get the portal. And it's a very upfront, black and white, just interesting way of managing this. You have someone who is this third party coming in with no very little emotional attachment to these guys, these players, and whatever, that is making these decisions, which obviously has some great advantages, maybe some disadvantages. And now you're treating this really as a business. And it goes back to the conversation we had just a week ago about these college student athletes turning over and being considered employees from these colleges and universities. When you talk about it in this light, it starts to make more and more sense. If you're going to sit me down and tell me what I'm worth, and I have to agree to a deal to continue to generate that revenue and continue to have that income from you, I'm certainly an employee. It's not a student athlete. This is directly involved with my performance on a football field and my notoriety and my name, image, and likeness. Oh my gosh. It's really crazy. And the fact that this man who's doing this, he doesn't work for the University of Oklahoma. He is, by all means, his own business owner that is just involved with them through a contract to manage this money from these collectives. It's really wild. So says right here, what happens when Sooner players want more money from Oklahoma? Or not Oklahoma, the Crimson and Cream Collective. Belzer explained his side of the Caden Green transfer. Caden Green, top 100 recruit, started as a true freshman, for all intents and purposes, was the future of Oklahoma's offensive line until seemingly out of the blue, he transferred to Missouri, SEC kind of blue chip type program. He says here, quote, when it came to Caden, just like everybody else, we presented him with a contract for the coming year. He was still under contract with us. When he did respond with us, he basically said he wanted substantially more money. We looked at it. We said, okay, we're not going to give you what you're asking, but we're willing to come up. So there was, in fact, a little bit of a negotiation there. We basically came close to matching what he asked, and then he sort of said, you know what? I'm going to go into the portal. At the end of the day, we can only have those conversations. That's what Belzer said. He goes into the portal, and you know what I mean? I don't know what his eventual deal looked like at Missouri. I'd assume it had to be pretty good. But it goes on to talk about, imagine any other business working this way. Imagine a Tampa Bay Rays outfielder wanting to negotiate a contract extension after fielding an offer from the Brewers. And it's like, the instability here and the precedent that this sets is really scary for how college athletics are going to operate as a whole in the future, because what you have and what we've had in years, this is nothing new, is an escalating arms race in college football. And it starts with, NIL and other pieces, and then it ends with who knows what. But if you're a somewhat competent football program, especially at the Division I FBS level, and your opponent is doing XYZ, you have to do XYZ ABC. And if that analogy makes no sense to you, I'm sorry, it's not the best way to illustrate it. Hey, how about this? I go to Northern Michigan. Michigan Tech, our rival, Division II squads, but just humor me here. Michigan Tech, when they have their kids on a visit, all of a sudden they've got live Huskies that they're taking photos with in the photo shoot. What are we going to turn around and do? We're the Wildcats. We better get some live cats in the photo shoot. Michigan Tech, all of a sudden, they start their NIL collective. They've got deals for half of their student athletes that are now generating income. Well, if I'm their competitor, if I'm their rival, what do I have to do to at least match it? I'm going to one-up them. I'm going to make a deal for every single one of my athletes. Or if you're Utah, get them a lease on a brand new truck from a dealership locally. That's incredible. It's really scary. I think that concept is unreal. So now it comes in the question of his original statement, is that where these dollars are going, where they're allocated, and the importance of deciding how that is determined is where this comes into play. Why are we spending, we as in just college football in general, why are we spending so much money on these analysts and other titles of people that, let's face it, aren't having an incredible impact on our program, even though they play integral roles in all of these college football programs? That cannot be understated. But to an outsider, it may not seem that way. Why, instead of doing this, why don't we take all of those funds, these year-long salaries of these full-time staffers, and put that into our Crimson and Cream? Put that into our Irish United, our Syracuse Orange United, our Romo Rise, whatever the hell you want to call it, right? And a lot of it comes from donations, but it comes back to this. This is where he says, no more hiring analysts, stop spending money, figure out how to fund your NIL program. We have to pay the labor, and the bill is only going to get bigger and bigger. So how could you turn around and say, yeah, we can hire more support staff? That's not realistic. That's his quote there. And I think this is a really trying time that for college football that they're going to be going through. And I just can't really see the end of this or what this entails. Yes, we'll see the effect of Division I much sooner than we will at D2 and D3. But you'd be crazy to think that none of this will trickle down. Like, this is, in fact, going to happen. There are going to be guys, whether it is guys, demanding money at the D2 level, or whether it's guys at D1 that get snubbed out of money they think they deserve that now end up at Division II, Division III schools because of changes and mishaps and whatever. This is going to trickle down and affect the lower levels of college football. I have no idea what the long term is of this. I don't have nearly the big enough brain to figure that out. It's just a very interesting proposition that I thought at least I would touch on, and I would like to kind of leave those thoughts with you guys. I don't have a say one way or the other. The way this is being handled is scary. And if it is going to be handled in this way, then yes, college athletes certainly do need to be directed as employees at this level, because you talk about them being paid for their labor and their services in direct correlation with their performance on a field, court, rink, whatever it is. It all comes back to that. They should probably be labeled as employees of the university and not college, just student athletes. It's just incredible. I don't think I'd believe myself saying that, but that's pretty wild stuff. I'd love to hear your take on that, and definitely some very interesting work.